Welcome, creators. It is craft fair season or getting ready for those craft fairs. And today I'm going to turn some napkins into easy craft fair makes. I'm going to make coasters, but you can make these into magnets. I'm going to share my tips along the way and do some troubleshooting for you. So even if you know how to make coasters, you might want to keep watching. So these are 4x4 wood squares. They have rounded corners, preference of mine. What you want to do is make a template, cardstock, out of manila tag, an old file folder, and then you can take whatever napkin that catches your fancy, move it around the napkin and see if that napkin is going to give you a coaster, a fridge magnet that you like. And also how many you can. This napkin here, I could probably have gotten easy 6 coasters out of it. So to prep this, you need to put a coat of gesso. And when I'm going to do something like that, I'm not just doing 4. I'm going to gesso 8 or 12. If you are doing it for a craft fair, multitask, do an assembly line, get all this part done. These take time to dry, so do this one night. The next day, you can move on to the next step. Saves time, saves cleanup. So I'm just going to give this a quick coat of gesso. I don't use any brand name gesso. This is economy gesso from an art store that I can purchase online. So these are the 2 napkins that I'm going to use. I'm actually making 4 coasters. They're all going to one person, and I'm picking the same color scheme, which tells you why I picked these napkins. But I thought we'll get a little bit of variety. To get ready, prepare the napkins, you want to take off the excess plies. Usually there too. For this one, that napkin, it came off really, really easy. This one layer came off and then the other, and it was tugging. It was almost ripping. Just slow down and save yourself the headache of ripping the napkin. Slow and easy wins the race. So again, if you're doing 5 different napkins, you can do this all in assembly line. Save the tissue, save the excess plies, you can use that. Now this takes a long time to dry, so if you do it overnight, great, you want it to dry. And now we're going to give it a coat of Mod Podge. You can use fluid matte medium or other adhesives. I'm using Mod Podge because, well, I have some and I don't like it, and this is a perfectly good place to use it. I'm giving it a generous coat. I've seen where people have given it 2 coats in between. I find just being generous at this stage, and I've had no problems. So you decide what works best for you. So I'm just giving everything a coat of Mod Podge, and you guess it, this is going to dry again. So this step, I could just, again, do it assembly line. So everything is dry. So now we are going to use the iron on decoupage technique. I'm going to use my mini iron. You could use a regular iron, just don't put it on steam. My mini iron is an off brand. It isn't the Cricut brand, even though it kind of sort of looks like it. I'm positioning this on the coaster, putting a thing of parchment paper, and then I'm using my mini iron. I have it set on setting 2. I put the iron in the middle and I work my way out. I want to make sure that I iron the entire surface. What the heat of the iron is doing is reactivating the adhesive that you've used. Take off that and check. It gets rid of all those wrinkles. And now I'm just cutting off the excess. So I would do all of these. I would do all the ones for this napkin, cut it off before I do what you're going to see me doing here. But for the sake of the video, I'm not doing it assembly line because you don't need to watch me do so many multiples. I'm making sure that everything is perfectly adhered right down to the corners. Sometimes I miss. I might have to put another bit of Mod Podge in there, adhesive. And sometimes I just have to make sure I iron right to the edge, like you see me doing here. Now you want this to cool before you progress to the next step, which is cutting off the excess. Quickest, easiest way, this is a file that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. And I'm just using there's a coarser side and a smoother side. I'm using the smoother side, and it easily cuts off the excess. You can use scissors, but it won't be quite as exact or as quick, I find. This is the best way to doing this. And again, I would sit in front of the TV. I would have them all ironed on, plug it in front of the TV, and just do this part. I'd put the garbage can in front of me and do this. So here I'm just you're going to watch me fast forward through all of them. I'm going to keep doing all of them. Now, with the patterns, anything goes. If you like it, do it. Any napkin goes. Any color scheme works. You can make them all the same, or you can try to maximize the patterns in the napkin and have them all slightly different, but the same basic color scheme. You can make coasters. Now, this could be a fridge magnet as well. You could kind of two-tone, or a Christmas tree ornament. You just drill a hole in it. So I've got some excess. That's just going into my scrap pile. One set is done. And now I'm just going to look on here and find interesting ones. Now, this napkin is great. It's for this all over pattern. You really get your money's worth because, like I said, 6 to 8 4x4 squares will fit on this. I'm being a little picky. And here we have this beautiful set. Now, we could take this polyvinyl varnish that's heat sensitive and varnish it now without going on. But we are going to do more. This is the step you do not want to skip. I am taking fluid matte medium, not the Mod Podge. I don't like Mod Podge for this purpose. It doesn't quite, it kind of makes a different surface. I like the fluid matte medium better because I am going to overpaint, and I am putting a coat of that on top. This is sealing the napkin. It's turning the napkin into a non-porous surface, which is going to make it easier to paint on. It also means that the paint isn't going to wick and give you something that you don't like. And if you make a mistake, you'll be able to get rid of it because you've sealed it. So I'm using, to colorize my coasters, I'm using my Inktense blocks. Now these are solid, like watercolor. They're water activated. But unlike watercolor, they are permanent. You want to use something permanent. So you could use watered down acrylics at this stage, or Inktense blocks, or some kind of ink that is permanent, because you're going to varnish this and you don't want to reactivate the color. So I have them swatched out, and I'm just matching the colors that I see in the napkin that I've chosen. And in order to match colors, I often mix 1 or 2 shades of blue, 1 or 2 shades of green. You can add a little bit of white. I also add gesso in when I'm doing the overpainting process. As I said, you could skip the overpainting process and just put a layer of varnish on top and be done with it. But I like turning the napkin into something that looks like it's hand painted. I decided to do a little bit of script stamping on here, and for that I am using archival ink, again, because it's permanent. In the end, I am putting on a liquid varnish, and I don't want to reactivate anything. So I'm making sure everything I'm putting on here is permanent and isn't going to reactivate when I put that final wet medium on top. I love the look of this napkin. It looks very vintagey. And there we have a close-up. That script just adds that little something something. And here I'm starting the overpainting process. I'm adding a little bit of gesso on top, and really I am globbing this on. And I have found that by going faster, not as fast as the video because that's sped up, when I go faster, I'm not overthinking it and I'm freer and I like the result. And when I'm going slow and meticulous and in my head, I tend to make more mistakes and I'm not as happy with the results. So here I'm taking the greens, the blues, and just adding a wash of color on top. And I'm using gesso to make it look like acrylic paint. And then I'm just dropping in the colors. And this works really well. If you choose a napkin like this one, that's very watercolor-ish, the overpainting technique is very easy to do. If you're unsure whether you want to do this as on a coaster, you could do this on an art journal page and practice the overpainting. And if you like how it results, then you know you can go and do it for the coaster, kind of like doing a trial run. But believe me when I say you will get better at overpainting the more that you do, whether it's an art journal page or a coaster or a card. The overpainting process I find very, very zen-like. I just absolutely love doing it. And I'm dropping in colors. So here I have the one blue, then I come in and drop another blue, mix in a little bit of the green. And these Inktense blocks, all you do is you just rub them and get the ink on the brush. You can make a pool of color on your craft mat if you want. And you just build up the intensity. They're very translucent, but a great way of adding color to something that's already there. And I know someone's going to say, but Karen, these are really expensive. When you do a price per one and realize how long these last, they do not go bad. They do not dry in the tube. Very little is wasted. You are getting a lot of great value for your money. This was one of the very first mixed media products that I bought. And next to my acrylic paints, I use these the most. I got a set of 72. I'm thinking a set of 24 would give you sufficient amount. And if you want to test them out and see if you like them, you can go and buy them singly at an art store. Or even I've seen them on Amazon to buy singly. So here I'm adding gesso and then adding color on top. And I'm not waiting for the gesso to dry. You'll get a slightly different look. I want this blendiness in there. So now that that's all dry and it doesn't take long, I've got some brown acrylic paint and I'm putting it on a Ranger blending foam and I'm just edging it with that brown. These, as I said, vintage color, they're off-white, and I'm just edging it with that brown all the way around the coaster. And you can see the difference on the one I did to the ones that I haven't done here. It really just frames your coaster. Now I'm using the blending foam. You could use a makeup sponge. I get those makeup sponge from the Dollar Tree. Love, love, love. So now I'm going to put some words on here, and I'm using my wooden letter stamps and brown acrylic paint with a little bit of black in it just to make it a little darker. And I'm just stamping the words on the coaster. And as you saw, if you make a mistake because you've put that coat of fluid matte medium, you can erase it and redo it. I wanted some words on there, but I didn't want them to be too in the face, which is why I chose to do it with brown. And I'm going with that whole vintage theme. There really is no real black on here, so I didn't want to introduce black at this stage. I spell out the words, and now I'm using that Ranger blending foam as kind of a stamp pad. I filled it up with acrylic paint, and I'm pressing the letter stamp in it and then just stamping on my coaster. But you can see these coasters, what's going to determine whether it's a coaster or not is, for the coasters, I'm putting cork on the back. You'll see me doing that momentarily. And if you were doing it into a fridge magnet, you would get magnetic sheets and put that on there. Now I put a layer of gold around just to edge it, and I'm splattering with gold just to make it a little bit, add a little bling. So now you know the basic steps to doing a coaster. I'm going to make the other set and share some more tips with you along the way. So here, instead of the brown, because this is more white and bright, I am putting a combination of Prussian blue and Hooker's green. Kind of gives that teal look that is in all these coasters. So I'm edging it with that blue to give it a bit of a different look. I want them to look, they're going to the same house, so I want them to all look similar, but I do want some variation. Then I'm doing the same thing. I've matched the colors, which are very close to the colors on the other one, and I'm just dropping in paint. With this one, I'm not using gesso. I'm just putting a translucent layer of color, beefing up the color, changing the colors a little bit. I've got blue, greens, but add some yellow green later on, some brown, all very botanical. Now, the reason I'm doing both of these napkins at the same time is because they do have the same color scheme. And that's another way you can save time. So if you were doing different napkins that have the same color scheme, do them all at once, then put all those colors away, bring out the next color scheme and do them. It just saves time and cleanup. So you can see the top two I've overpainted and tweaked the colors, and the bottom two not. Big difference. They're much bolder, much nicer, and they look more hand painted. These make good hostess gift. Wrap them up with a stack of 4 with a ribbon. I've added some lime green on those 2 lower ones, and I'm just adding a little bit of that on the top one because I want it to all go together. Now this has some branches in there, and I decided to take my gold paint that's in a fine line applicator bottle and just add the gold lines on there wherever the stems were. So I'm going to the napkin to make me, to decide what I want to do. And there are all 4 of them. And if a little bit of gold is good, I'd still need it to splatter gold on this one. Make sure you take time to let the splatter dry. So this would be if I would do all 8 or 12 and splatter them all at once and then let them dry. Now, here are the cork squares that, again, I bought on Amazon. I got a set. They had half of them were round and half of them were the square. But you'll notice that my square cork is not rounded on the edges, so I have to solve that problem. So I just line this up and press it in place. It's overlapping on one side, and then the corners are going to need to be cut off. Then I put it on a cutting board, and you want to use a sharp X-Acto knife, and you want to avoid what you're going to see here, where I'm pulling the cork and it's kind of crumbling and ripping as much as possible. But wait, I'm going to show you how to solve that problem. One sharp X-Acto blade, press down and press hard. And then if some of it peels off or it's pebbly, use that same file, same side, and go around and smooth off any of those rough edges. This worked really, really well. Problem solved. So I decided to add some script to this one because they are going to the same place. So I may not have, but I wanted something to tie them all together, something to be cohesive. And who doesn't love some text or some script? But you could easily leave that out. Then I decided because I stamped the letters in a darker, more black brown, I decided to add black around the edges, and that really made it stand out. I so love this set, this coaster set. Look at them. They just make me happy. Now I'm using heavy duty wood varnish. This is from Polyvine, and I got it from Ninny's Napkins, which is where the napkins come from. I like the satin finish, but they do have dead flat, if that's your preference. And I am just giving each one 2 coats of this. This is will take heat. So when you put the hot coffee cup on it, it will not stick. So you need to make sure that whatever varnish you're using on coasters will not stick when you put heat on. I've had that happen. I'm putting a little bit of that to seal the cork. I just thought that was a good idea, and that totally worked. If you were turning these into fridge magnets or ornaments, you wouldn't need to use this wood varnish. And look at the shine. I love these. They will be packed up and mailed out to their new home. So if you're doing craft fairs or you want to give hostess gifts or little gifts, these work perfectly. Go through your napkin stash, see what you have, and turn those napkins into art, into a gift, into usable art. Until next time, go get creative.